right, I think we're live. Hey everybody, my name is Kyron Loggins. I'm an alum of the Hidden Genius Project, fifth cohort, not fifth, fourth cohort out of Oakland. And I'm here today with George Hofstetter, who is also an alum of the Hidden Genius Project, the third cohort, I believe, out of Oakland. Yep. And also is the founder of GHTech, Inc. So George, just before we, get started and get into the bigger questions, can you tell us a little bit about GHTech and what that is?
Yeah, definitely. So GHTech stands for George Hofstetter Technologies Incorporated, founded in 2017. Our mission is to change the world's perspective on race through technology. These technologies being the products that we've created from Connect the Dots, a social network that connects African-American private school students in predominantly white schools together. So they have a safe and inclusive environment to share their experiences with discrimination, to cop stop, to Up to Code, a free online mobile computer science curriculum designed for students of color to bridge the gap of the digital divide.
Definitely. And so I guess, to tell a story, you kind of have to look at it from the beginning, the middle, and the end, or in your perspective, the current. So what, kind of sparked your interest in tech initially and got you into, what you do now?
So I watched The Matrix. I was probably like maybe 12. I watched The Matrix, and then it was like a screen that filled with code. And it was so confusing. Like, it boggled my mind. I was like, I want to be the person that can write that code. I want to be able to create like a matrix. That seemed cool at the time. So that really sparked my interest. And I started watching a lot of YouTube videos on what coding was. And then I started breaking into phones. I figured out how to jailbreak iPhones. I started doing it at school for a few of my peers. They would pay me, and then it was sort of like a business, sort of that entrepreneurial mindset started. But the entrepreneurship really came just from my family as well. Like, I come from a family of Black entrepreneurs. My mother ran a preschool for 10 years. My grandfather was the head of a community bank of the Bay for a few years, excuse me. He also ran a company some decades back now, actually, but out of Southern California as well. So, and then my grandmother was a minister of the Unity Church of San Leandro. So that education piece, like that educator and that entrepreneurial mentality was definitely like in the DNA, so to speak. So yeah, I got that support system for sure.
Definitely. Then I guess I would ask you, you say you were like jailbreaking in the phones, and you kind of always had an interest just based off of things. You didn't even know what coding was, but you watched The Matrix and things like that kind
exactly.
of stuff. But what kinds of resources, like when you first did notice, like, I'm interested in this is something I want to get into, what kinds of resources did you have access to that kind of may or may not have helped you explore that?
So the first resource I mentioned earlier, YouTube. YouTube was my best friend. Google was my best friend. You can really like utilize those search engines, and I was figuring out what like search engine optimization was, and just getting around that vocabulary and like how to search, like how to go fishing for yourself. That's really a resource. Like that toolkit helped. Codecademy.com. When I was on YouTube and how can I learn to code for free? Codecademy pops up. I started taking courses for free. I got introduced to Hidden Genius through Brothers Code. That was my first like introduction into technology, right? It was a Brothers Code event at Laney College, man, probably like 2014, 2013. And then there was a hackathon that Keynote Labs produced. And that was at Impact Hub downtown Oakland. And that really, having the Brothers Code event catapulted me into the hackathon. And then that hackathon sort of like catapulted me even further into really trying to motivate me to learn computer science and do what I could do there.
Definitely, I feel you on that. And then, you kind of talk about you've done all these different things. You're a part of all these different projects. But at what point did you decide that, tech was what you wanted to do for your career, that this was what you were going to do, professionally, and this is how you were going to pursue success?
Mhm. Man, it was probably after just receiving a lot of love from the community. After I was at that first hackathon when I was 13, KQED had followed me around for a few days of my middle school, and then the response that that got was like, I must be doing something right. Like something must be cool about this. And then it was the piece that technology could change society. Like there's societal issues that folks of color endure, and that we're subjected to, and technology was framed to me in a way that this is a vehicle that you can use to create that change, that impact that you want to see. And it's direct, because you're in control of coding, right? So you're creating these systems for equality, right? Like you're building equitable systems for folks to come after you. So yeah, I think that answered your question a little bit.
Yeah, and I love that you started, with the positive reinforcement, because we do see like a lot of the time a big push for interest in things like, even when it comes to the idea of how many we say Black boys love to do sports, or Black
Mhm,
boys love to rap, or whatever people say, stereotypically, a lot of the push to do certain activities or to pursue certain interests for anyone is, the desire for admiration, the desire for like public recognition. And so it
mhm,
is so important for us to, especially in the Black community, to acknowledge and uplift people who are doing things like working on themselves with tech, or working on themselves with anything.
mhm.
We have to definitely broaden out what we applaud. And I think that it's really important to note that that positive reinforcement early on is conducive to
Yeah,
success, and it was really helpful,
and
like making you want to do something.
yeah, and I have to piggyback off that like positive reinforcement piece. It had to do with not only that like this is already something that a lot of folks weren't interested in, like tech in general, but it was that it was for social good. Like the whole hackathon that I went to was centered around, could an app have saved Trayvon Martin? A lot of folks aren't talking about how that can happen. So when it was posed to me that way, I realized that tech was so powerful beyond my comprehension at the time.
And to
So
have that received
um,
so well.
exactly. So when it was received so well, I realized that I can do social good at the same time as trying to be successful, because they're sort of one and the same in my eyes. I succeed when my community is uplifted and have better resources. Yeah.
I definitely agree on that. And that kind of brings us into our next question. So, like, of course, you had already had your interest in tech. You'd already kind of explored coding and even, developing in general.
Hmm.
But you also, of course, are a part of the Hidden Genius Project.
Yep.
What was your time with the Hidden Genius Project like, and how did that kind of help you evolve? And what did you
Mhm.
gain from that experience?
Yeah, so the reason I had even sought out the Hidden Genius Project was because I was looking for a program that was longer than 3 days. Hackathons are only like 2 to 3 days of a weekend, or like you're in an organization and it's like 2 days. Um, but I was looking for a program that was going to challenge me and that was really going to like walk me through some of the concepts that I wanted to learn and put me into bring me to environments that would support that, right? Like Hidden Genius, they do the Friday field trips at tech companies. That was super, like, that was such an incentive for me. Like you're coding Monday through Thursday, and then you get to go experience what it would be like to be an engineer somewhere. And that was huge for me, along with like the heavy leadership skills and community orientedness. Like that familial bond was definitely really beneficial as well. But yeah, the show had helped cultivate a strong foundation for me to grow.
That's like that's interesting, because I ask that question, often to when I interview other former and current geniuses,
Hmm.
and everybody gets something different out of it. And some people already come with the tech aspect and they leave more of a leader. Some people come very confident, but maybe not have material skills, and they
Hmm.
leave with something that they can, put on their resume and say, I can do this. And so I think that it's interesting that, you did come with a lot of that technical know-how, and you were pretty much always a confident individual, but you also left
Thank you.
with some of that sense of community building. Um,
Definitely.
so that's definitely interesting. And then I guess in reference to some of your more recent endeavors with the Hidden Genius Project, what can you tell me about, the Tech Slam trip to London and South Africa? How was that kind of transformative for you?
Man, I love how you phrased it as transformative because it was for sure life changing. It was my first time out the country, you know. Um, they paid for my passport. That was huge. Um, we don't understand like that access, like that exposure is so important. Like without a United States influence, being in another country, those like the behavior and um, the communities, you know, like the diversity, educational systems, like it was crazy. It was dope to say the least, for sure. But it was beautiful. Um, I felt included, you know. In Africa when we were in SA, man, I just wrote poems a lot. Like I feel like one of the things I'm trying to practice right is like poems. Like I'd be writing poems to reflect, and that's something that I do for like self-care. It's like a form of therapy for myself because I be in a lot of different places and I do a lot of different stuff. So like when it gets overwhelming, that's how I decompress.
Yeah.
So when I was in South Africa, it was overwhelming, and I'm sure the folks on the trip can share the same, would share the same thing. Like we were waking up and we were going and we were teaching, and then we'd come back, and then we'd be in a village, and then we're at a museum, and then we're here and we're there, you know. Um, so being able to be on the bus, right, going to certain spots, you would catch me on my phone writing a poem about what just happened, or just journaling like what was going on, and that was great. That was really powerful for me because I can look back on that in my notes now, right? Because it's been over a year, but when I read those poems, I remember how I felt. I remember where I was, uh, stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And like I didn't do the South Africa trip, but I did do London the year prior
Hmm.
with the Hidden Genius Project for Tech Slam. And I think that is, it's not only such a transformative experience, but it's connective to get to travel and see,
Yeah,
just not only see the world, but also see like Black youth everywhere and see that.
for real.
You know, you get to be in the motherland and you get to introduce technology to people who see, who look just like you, who are your people.
Man,
And so that's
it,
interesting.
yeah.
And I mean, I didn't get to go to South Africa with Hidden Genes Project, unfortunately, but I did get to go to Africa before. And so having done like the work with them in London, it is
Hmm.
kind of, you do get to see like how that work is transformative and how it
Yep.
not only transforms like the people that you meet, and they get to see, African Americans in positive light that they probably don't get to see us in often in their own media. But you also get to view things and you get to change your own perspective. And you get to see how similar you are to people and how many commonalities you have to your people everywhere. But like for you, what was it like to have that experience introducing tech and like teaching people who look just like you but are from a whole different part of the world?
Um, Transformative. It definitely like, for lack of a better term, shook me up. You know, I wasn't expecting like, um, I guess I sort of checked myself. You know what I'm saying? As an American, you know, we're privy to a lot of privilege that we don't really understand. You know, like there's an entitlement that just comes with being like an American citizen that is really, really gross. So when I was over there, I was like really taken aback at the students because the students were just incredibly smart, like really breaking barriers when it comes to connecting education and then bringing it back to your community and uplifting that, you know, creating those systems for your community to thrive within education. You don't see that in the United States. It's not taught, you know, but when we were in those classrooms, like these students were only thinking about what they're learning in the classroom, how they can bring it back to their community, um, and sort of just advance that, you know. And I thought that was huge. Like that community connection um, is lost a lot within the education system in the United States. And just there, yeah, you know, that's really what it was. That really took me back because I was like, I know middle schoolers in the US that can't hold a candle to the topics that they were discussing, the way that they would present themselves with that confidence. And they were doing X, Y, and Z with a toilet that didn't flush. You know what I'm saying? Like, these folks are outside with flies in their hallways, and these students are still leveling up. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're so in tune with that communal aspect and the inner genius. It was inspiring to me for sure. I learned probably more on the trip than I taught, most definitely.
Definitely. And I think there's a lot to be said for the way that just culture is different and it emphasizes different things, and then you get different results. And it's even going into the cities out there, I mean, for me, that look like American cities, you still kind of can see that the culture is different. And that's down to what they value as people. And so that just changes them as people. But I guess to, take it back down into current day, or back into your story, I guess. Can you tell me about, you kind of were one of the first geniuses, and especially for me, and James kind of spoke to this a little bit last time, one of the first people we saw ever do like the VC funding, especially of our age group. What was that like for you? How did that first big, glimpse of success kind of change your life and your perspective?
Financially, it exposed me to stability, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Like, that opportunity, that was a sponsorship given by Capital One to me, in the creation of Up to Code, that free online mobile innovative computer science curriculum. That was huge. I didn't think they would take a chance on a 16-year-old about to turn 17, So that sort of just pushed me further. Like, it made me go harder in what I did. And that's really what it was like. Like, institutional validation means a lot to a certain extent. And as I've gotten older and been in educational institutions and corporate environments, I've realized that institutional validation doesn't mean anything. You know what I'm saying? It's all about like you trusting in your own genius, your confidence in what you can bring to the table, rather than a piece of paper like a degree or a fat check from a given organization. You know what I'm saying? It's really about the work. But off of that,
you
go ahead.
That you, I think it's interesting, not to cut you off, of course, but just because it's one of our coming up questions. I think it's very interesting that you make that distinction, that you noticed it in the presence of having that,
exactly that exposure. Without the exposure, you're not going to think that way. Yeah.
If you never have that, and if you aren't granted, the privilege of accessing that, you can't say it's unimportant, and it is a different perspective. So I think that it's interesting that you do, have that hindsight, but that it's not something that you necessarily the ability even to see.
Yeah, we know that we can strive past that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was great to be able to like show the geniuses back at home in East Oakland, like, yo, this is what you can do. And you can, like, this is now standard, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is low. Now y'all can go even further, you know what I'm saying? Just because it was done then. So that's how I really looked at it. But yeah, we're striving past all that now, for sure. Generational wealth, like creating economic systems for ourselves, or excuse me, banks for ourselves, you know what I'm saying? Like, really creating or stepping in the right direction towards economic liberation for folks of color.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, as somebody who is such an influence and a pioneer, not just necessarily for their age group, but just in general for what you do, what is it like to have, to be that person amongst, your peers, even when you think of the geniuses that are coming up now who look at you as an influence? What is it like to be in that position at such a young age?
It definitely feels good to have like the support system, knowing that you got a village behind you. You know what I'm saying? But it also means that it's like your moves aren't really your moves. Like, the decisions I make, I feel like are for the greater good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be a billionaire. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to reach like that level of success and then preach that. Like, Black capitalism. I don't want to talk about all that. Like I'm trying to really focus on creating equitable systems for folks that traditionally wouldn't have them. You know what I'm saying? And then when they have that opportunity, then in turn we do the same thing on an even more grandiose scale. So that's how I view it. I view it as like um, I don't know. It's great to be an inspiration to folks. You know what I'm saying? But view me as like um, a vehicle of change or something. Like this is just small potatoes to what y'all can do. You know what I'm saying? I'm a product of Oakland, California, and the support system in the village that supported me: Hidden Genius, Kino Labs, Black Rose Code, Impact Hub. You know what I'm saying? Like and a lot of other organizations. So off the backs of all that work came the success and like influence, and then past that came all the other geniuses that are in you know what I'm saying, Rich 1, 2, 3, Oak 7, you know what I'm saying, like LA 1, LA 2, like all of that. That's how I feel like that. I felt like I could help support them in that way. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. And then I guess just before we wrap up, I would
Mhm.
definitely like to ask you, what are some of your goals for the future, both near and far?
um, One is to definitely just keep the focus, you know what I'm saying, stay on the same path, and just expose myself to more outside of the United States. I'm studying abroad this summer in London at Cambridge University, or excuse me, the University of Cambridge and University of Oxford. And that's going to be great, you know what I'm saying, to have that experience. And that was inspired a lot from y'all experience in London, you know what I'm saying? Like when I got to meet y'all over there, I was like, man, the diversity over there, like I really want to experience that in the tutorial style learning. So that exposure was huge. Um, which is why I wanted to fish and like get this experience this summer. But yeah, that's sort of a goal to expose myself to more forms of, to different forms of education. Um, Definitely get my degree at some point, but it's not a priority, especially because of COVID. And I really stress that a lot to my peers during coronavirus and quarantine. You know what I'm saying? Focus on you, mental health, focus on skill sets and passions, and finding your purpose within that. You know what I'm saying? You want to find your purpose, and then the paper's going to follow. And that's really the realest thing. Um, but yeah, what I'm working on right now, which is like a shorter term goal, I was contracted by the nonprofit organization Kingmakers of Oakland to build the King's Corner mobile application for their students that have the curriculum offered at the school districts that they are, and funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And that was huge as well. So I'm really focused on that and expanding my team to build like a very strong foundation of tech for them to be able to scale up um, and empower these young king and queens to trust in their inner genius and create the impact that they want to see. You know what I'm saying? Because you can change the world. It only takes one person. Um, you know what I'm saying? So yeah.
And then I guess just as a send off for anybody who's watching at home, and as a last word for you, what would you encourage anybody who is striving to succeed, is trying to create their own business, is trying to just come up in the world? How would you advise that they take care of themselves and are mindful of caring about themselves as they do that?
Mm. The first thing I would say is listen to your body and like trust your instincts. You know what I'm saying? I would say like nutrition is hella important, um, as well as like once like uh, how do I want to articulate it? I guess it's first like trusting yourself. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times when we're in school, we're students and we don't get the respect or like authority to ask questions, and we feel embarrassed and shamed to like ask for help or support. But that student label can get you in the door of a lot of organizations just to learn. You know what I'm saying? Like internships, asking for mentorship, um, that sort of stuff. Uh, what else? And then passion, you know what I'm saying? Explore like what you're interested in. Just because like you didn't like a history class doesn't mean you don't like history. You just don't like the way it was taught to you. You know what I'm saying? Maybe explore a different form of that. And that goes for a lot of different stuff. So outside of school as well, you know what I'm saying? If you want to create an impact in your community, figure out how. Ask your parents, go into the community, you know what I'm saying? Because a lot of folks, at least in Oakland, you know what I'm saying? Like revolution is in the air and questioning the systems in place is like standard. So having that understanding, that context around what you want to do, I feel like definitely supports students in wanting to create their own pathway. You know what I'm saying? I feel like it's a lot harder for students that aren't coming from a city like Oakland, that might be in the Midwest or even in the South. Um, the exposure to those thought processes, hella important, hella important. So I would say just like challenge yourself. You know what I'm saying? If you think something you're doing is easy, like make it a bit more difficult or something. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Definitely, I feel you. Well, I want to thank you a lot for showing up, giving us your time, giving us your wisdom, giving us your experience. I also would like to thank Comcast and the Hidden Genius Project for helping us put this all together and, bring this to you. And that is our show for today. We'll be back next week with another young Black man who's out here trying to make it. Thank you guys for staying with us today, and we'll see you guys later.
Right on. Peace, family.